Hi everyone, my name is Scott and I'm a runner. Welcome to the Run Scotty Run YouTube channel. So in this second installment in my video series discussing when I ran 8 marathons in 8 months between September of 2007 and April of 2008, I'm going to talk about how I physically and maybe mentally prepared myself to take this challenge on. If you haven't seen the first video where I talked about the why I decided to take this challenge on, and how I did the planning, sort of the logistical planning, pardon me. I'll have that link down below. I will have created a playlist where all the videos will be. So please go down in the comments down below and check that out. All right, so I have quite a few notes here which I'll be referring to, because I don't want to miss anything. I should say I didn't have a coach. I never really consulted a coach. I'd had quite a few marathons under my belt at that point. I think when I ran, when I started it, I had already had, I guess I had about 6 or 7 marathons in total in my life under my belt. So I knew what running a marathon felt like. There was no sort of books or, plans online or anything like that for what to do to run 8 marathons in 8 months. So some of this stuff I just maybe made up as I went along, because I knew, I knew myself. I knew my own, kind of some of my own capabilities. I adjusted my training, my preparation, and my approach to all the races accordingly. Because my number one goal was, not to set any PRs, not to go out there and and hammer myself into the ground every race. It was to get the 8 marathons done in 8 months, and obviously I didn't want to just go there and walk them. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I didn't want to go there and just walk them and collect the medal. I wanted to to run them. So in the last marathon, or in the last video, I ran through the marathons I did. So I'll just quickly again run through them if you haven't watched that video. So the first one I did was the U.S. Air Force Marathon at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, just outside Dayton, Ohio. That was in September of 2007. In October of 2007, I did the Spirit of Survival Marathon in the Wichita Mountains Wildlife Refuge just outside Lawton, Oklahoma. November of 2007, I did the Route 66 Marathon in Tulsa, Oklahoma. December of 2007, the Dallas White Rock Marathon in Dallas, Texas. January, I did of 2008, I did the Chevron Houston Marathon in Houston, Texas. February 2008, the Breast Cancer Marathon in Jacksonville, Florida. March of 2008, the Little Rock Marathon in Little Rock, Arkansas. And then April of 2008, the Oklahoma City Memorial Marathon, which essentially was in my backyard because I was living in the Oklahoma City area at the time. Okay, so obviously, like I said earlier, I was really testing the waters, not only because, I really didn't know what to expect. I didn't really have anybody to go talk, to talk about, hey, have you run 8 marathons in 8 months? What did you do? So, I just, kind of made it up as I went along, because I had so many things, so many great people helping me and supporting me. And, so many things were lining up just right that I really wanted to take advantage of the situation. All right. So looking at my schedule, so I mentioned this a bit in the first marathon. On average, I had about 4 weeks, kind of for the first 6 marathons. I had about 4 weeks between each marathon. Between the 6th and 7th marathon, I only had 2 weeks off. And then the 7th and 8th marathon, I had about 6 weeks off. But between the 6th and 7th marathon, I was actually on holidays the whole time. So after I ran the breast cancer marathon, I was on holidays, so I didn't have to go back to work or anything. So I could be a little bit more, relaxed and really, catch up on my sleep and things like that. So that's sort of where we're at. I knew that once I got started, that rest and recovery were going to be very important. I was 45 when I started. I turned 46 in October of '07. So, for 7 of the marathons, I was 46 years old. Not that I guess a year means much, but I was in my mid 40s. So I knew that rest and recovery were important, to keep the dream alive, and also not to get injured, and maintain my kind of mental and physical health and strength as much as possible. I knew I wasn't, as I mentioned, I wasn't going to be able to run a full out effort every time, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was to get them all done. So in the spring of 2007, I actually ran the Little Rock Marathon in Little Rock, Arkansas in March. And then in April, I ran the Oklahoma City Memorial Marathon. And there was 8 weeks between those 2 marathons. And that was the closest that I'd ever run 2 marathons before in my life. I just kind of wanted to see how that felt. It actually went okay, and that was sort of physically one of the last puzzle pieces to fall in place. As I mentioned in the first video, that's the spring of '07 was kind of when I started to do all of my logistical planning, booking hotels, getting my leave approved, etc., and of course finding the 8 marathons that I could run. So up until that time, I'd been running most of my marathons. Those 2 marathons, and specifically in the spring of '07, the Little Rock and Oklahoma City Marathon, I was running at around 4:45, not terribly fast, but I knew, how I felt after each of those marathons. I had kind of pushed it kind of hard. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to slow down if I'm going to go the distance, so to speak, and run 8 marathons. So what I decided was I was going to shoot for about 5 hours, for 5 hours for each of these marathons. This would allow me to keep my heart rate low, and I did most of my training. I did, fairly low, kind of zone 2 heart rate, as aerobic as possible. And that would also allow me, hopefully, to recover more quickly. It wouldn't be as hard on my central nervous system, and mentally as well. And now, fortunately, all the marathons that I signed up for had cutoff times of 5.5 hours or more. So I wasn't worried about the fact that, either A, they weren't going to let me in if I told them I was going to run 5 hours, or, that I'd be getting picked up by the sag wagon because I was, way off in the back. I wanted to be able to make sure, nor did I want to have to do, some marathons. If you think you're going to be more than the cutoff time, you can start like a couple hours early. I didn't want to do that. I'd done that once before in a marathon, and I had a really, really bad experience. And also at least a couple of them had 5-hour pacers. The Dallas Marathon, and the Little Rock Marathon, I definitely remember them having pacers, 5-hour pacers, which, was kind of helpful. I could just, kind of shut my mind off, stay with the pacer, and I wouldn't have to worry too much about my splits. So I was feeling pretty good. Lots of base miles. I had actually run a couple of marathons in the fall of '06. As I mentioned in the first video, in September of '06, I ran with Dean Karnazes at the Little Rock, or the Tulsa Route 66 Marathon, when he did his 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 days. And then I ran the Tulsa Marathon again in November of '06, when it was the inaugural year of the Route 66 Marathon being there. So in that, 6 months, I guess, prior to me starting, I had 4 marathons under my belt. So I felt, my fitness was pretty good, and I had lots of base miles. But I decided that, what I would do was I would do like a 16 to 18 week standard marathon training block. I think I might have used one from John Stanton's Book of Running. He's the founder of the Running Room in Canada. I'm sorry, I don't have that book right handy with me here. So right or wrong, I figured, I wanted to make sure that during that training period, I spent lots of time on my feet, because in the space of 8 months, I was going to be running 8 marathons. So training through the heat of the Oklahoma summer for that fall marathon was tough. I'd done it before, so in some previous years, so I had a pretty good strategy and knew what was going to work. I did a lot of early morning running. Fortunately, just north of Oklahoma City, there's a man-made reservoir called Lake Hefner, and it has like a perfect 9 to 10 mile loop all around it. It's pretty much pancake flat, but there's, when you park at the south end, there's porta potties there and everything else. And, it was just a beautiful place to run, especially in the morning, as the sun was coming up. And the other thing was it was close to Tinker, so I could do my run, jump in my car. 15 minutes later, I was on the base, and there was a gym with full showers and everything in the building right beside the building where I work. So I just drive to work, take my shower, and be at work. And again, like I said in the first video, my bosses were very understanding if I showed up 15 or 20 minutes later. So I would manage to get, I would do maybe sometimes like some 10-mile runs midweek. And then on the weekends, I would go there as well, again, early in the morning, and run, maybe a couple loops, get my 18, 20 miles in. And, just being by the lake, I found it quite a bit cooler. I also, during that time period, I was doing regular strength training about 3 times a week. Like I said before, I had a gym that shared the same parking lot as the building where I worked, military gym that was open all day, Monday to Friday. I was also, I had a gym that I was a member that was about 3 blocks from my house in Norman. And sometimes when it got really, really hot, because, the Oklahoma summers can be, well over 100 degrees, many, many days in a row. And lots of times when I would wake up in the morning, even at 5 o'clock, it would be 85 degrees, because the ground would get really hot from the sun the day before, and it was a lot of clay in it. So anyway, I sound like I'm whining there, but I was luckily enough, because I had those gyms, I was able to do quite a bit of running on treadmills as well. Both those gyms were air conditioned. And I actually found I did probably more treadmill running in Oklahoma than I have even in my life in Canada. But I found that regular, at least once a week, probably on the treadmill, I really found that my pace, my ability to hold a very steady pace was helped that way, because, on a treadmill, either you hold the pace that the belt is turning, or it's, you're going to be stepping on the front, or it's going to spit you off the back. So I did actually find that helpful. And it was a break as well sometimes to say, oh gosh, I don't feel like going. It's 95 degrees outside, 100 degrees. I'll go run on the treadmill for an hour. So that helped a lot. Okay, let me just refer to my notes here. Yeah, so like I said, on the weekends, I would do, because of the way things were at Lake Hefner, I could run one loop, stop at my car, grab something to drink, and I used to keep like some sponges submerged in a container of water, and splash myself down with the water. So that was really helpful. Also, what was really helpful was there was a woman that I worked with in I worked in the training squadron there. She was attempting her first marathon at the Route 66 marathon that November. So sometimes later in the summer, before I was getting ready to do the U.S. Air Force marathon, she would join me. So that was, for longer runs on the weekend. So that was kind of nice. Other than that, I did 99.9% of my running by myself. Okay, so once I did the first marathon, I did an 18-week training block. Then I ran the U.S. Air Force marathon. And then pretty much after that, all I did was, kind of maintenance in between, maintenance of my body, and also maintenance of my fitness. So normally after I would run the marathon, even though I was running a bit slower than what I would normally run, I would take at least 2 full days off, and then I would try and do like at least a couple of shorter runs, like anywhere say between 8 to 10 Ks, but really, really easy. And sometimes that's when the treadmill was nice, because it was also a little bit softer foot strikes on my body. So I would do at least a couple runs, just some active recovery, trying to get that any gunk that was still left in my muscles and things like that, try and help speed up flushing that out. And then maybe sometimes I would take a couple of days off after that, and then back into kind of some normal training. What I found was, and I'll talk a lot more about this when I wrap it up, but what I found was I didn't have to do a lot of long runs, because I was running a marathon every 4 weeks or so. The marathon acted kind of as my long run. So all I was doing in between was recovering, taking care of my body, trying to get extra rest when I need it, eat properly, hydrate, stretch, do that sort of thing. So I would normally, if I had 4 weeks or 3 to 4 weeks, I would normally maybe run, maybe like say a 10 miler. After the first week, after I'd recovered, I'd run like maybe a 10 miler, half marathon length run, just to keep myself, again, time on my feet, and, my stomach adjusted to taking the goos. I was using lemon lime goo in those days, and I think by the time I was done the last marathon, I thought if I ever see another lemon lime goo, I might drop kick it into the middle of next week. But anyway, they worked. Thanks again. I was very, very lucky. They worked really, really well for me throughout the whole lead up. So essentially 12 months almost, I guess, from the lead up, and then the 8 months of doing the marathons. I did sort of maintain my strength training a little bit, but I kind of went by feel. If I was feeling tired or fatigued, then I might do like maybe one, maybe 2 sessions, lighter sessions in the gym, just to kind of keep a lot of my core stronger, that sort of thing. So I just kind of went by feel. But I only kind of thought in my head, okay, I only have a limited amount of energy in between pardon me, in between these marathons. So strength training was, if something fell by the wayside, it was going to be strength training. Also, as time wore on, probably after I got the first maybe 3 or 4 marathons done, I actually started to reduce the number of the runs that I did per week, but I kept the mileage of those runs a little higher. So my weekly mileage might stay the same. So sometimes a typical running week then would be, I might run like 4 10 milers, or 4 8 to 10 milers, and maybe a half marathon or whatever on the weekend. My body just seemed to really adapt to that, and I'll talk about this a lot more in depth when I wrap this series up. But as time went on and I was getting more marathons under my belt, that's how my body sort of liked to move. It liked to be out there for an hour and a half to 2 hours. If I just went out, say, for 45 minute to an hour run, it just never sort of felt right. And a couple of times I thought I was going to get injured. It took my body a little longer to warm up in those runs, but sort of once I got going, my body seemed to like to run longer. It just, it was just one of those adaptations. So that's essentially what I did for training. So, a full on 16 to 18 weeks block, right up to the first marathon. And then in between that, I just kind of did maintenance. I did, maybe 4 to 5 runs a week. Between the first few, I was probably still doing about 5 runs a week, more treadmill running, less strength training. And then as time went on, I probably dropped a run a week, but then I lengthened them up a little bit. And, the times My times in the last 4 started to drop off a little bit. Some of those were environment, some of them, a couple of them were mental, but I'm going to talk more in depth in the third video. The next video in this series, I will talk about the first 4 marathons that I did. And then in the 4th video of this series, I'll talk about the last 4. So I'll talk a little bit more in detail about, the course and, where I was kind of at in the grand scheme of things of these 8 marathons, how it went, how I was feeling on the day, physically and mentally. So yeah, so if you just watched this video, again, please check down below. You can watch the first video in the series. I'll have a link to the playlist and that video. Consider subscribing and clicking the notification bell if you want to watch the rest of the series. Consider if you are enjoying this, please consider giving it a like. It'd be much appreciated. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video. Remember that no matter how big you are, how old you are, your shape, your size, how far you run or how fast you run, if you run, you are a runner. So I wish you the best in your running adventures, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. Thank you and take care.